Hey lady, welcome to the Grit, Growth, Grace podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Anne Marie. I'm wife to James and mom to 4 beautiful kids, plus 1 miscarried baby, from 9 months up to 8 years. My hope is to help other women experience the postpartum period all the way up to the first year of baby's life as a time of grit, growth, and grace. Hi lady, I'm so excited for today's guest episode. Another one, I know. Last week was a guest episode. This week is too. I heard about cycle syncing for the first time several years ago, and it really appealed to me, this idea that you had different phases of your cycle that you would move through, and that how you might approach your professional goals, your workout goals, even the way you eat might change during them. I think it first appealed to me because it made some sense of the fact that I didn't always feel the same from day to day. And I noticed changes in that in a way that I didn't notice in my husband. So that was my introduction to cycle syncing. And so I've been in touch since then with Megan, the founder of the Aligned Cycle. She taught a cycle syncing course, teaches it, and has a workshop as well. And I asked her recently, would you be willing to explore what the postpartum period can look like in terms of cycle syncing? Because, of course, especially before your cycle comes back, meaning your first ovulation, you do tend to have, if you're breastfeeding, these fluctuating levels of estrogen in particular. And so how is it possible to sync your cycle, one, before you have your cycle back, but two, even after that first one, you tend to have some irregular or funky cycles before things kind of settle out. So what does approaching all of that mindfully look like during the postpartum time? So especially up to the first year. So this is what Megan gave me in response, and I am just thrilled to pieces about it. I'm so delighted to share it with you. So grateful for her expertise. So without further ado, I present to you, Megan.
Welcome. I am so happy to be here recording this guest episode. My name is Megan Faller. I am the founder of the Aligned Cycle, where I help women understand what's going on hormonally so they can live in alignment with their values and their design. And I help women create self-manuals that incorporate cycle syncing, wellness, their work and business, so that they can achieve their goals and still maintain health, wellness, peace along the way. Today, I'm going to be talking about cycle syncing during postpartum. So, I'm going to try to make it brief to give you an overview of what the 4 phases of the hormonal cycle are in the aligned cycle. And then we're going to transition into how does this apply to the postpartum time period. So, there are 4 phases. The first is phase 1, which is the a rest and retreat phase. And then we have phase 2, which is the ease in and ramp up phase. Then we move into phase 3, be seen and connect, and phase 4, the wrap up and nest phase. So phase 1 is the hormonal low, that rest and retreat, where the hormones essentially plummet. And this is kind of that low phase where you're feeling maybe unmotivated, low mood, low energy, and you may be experiencing other symptoms. Phase 2, ease and ramp up, it starts on about day 3 of the cycle, and it is a phase where you have small amounts of estrogen increasing that kind of give you a little bit of a boost, but you're not really at a peak during this time. So you might feel a little better than phase 1, but it's not kind of full hormonal energy and support. Then we move into phase 3 again, which is be seen and connect. And what's happening hormonally in phase 3 is you get this dose of estrogen. Your estrogen's peaking. Typically, you're feeling energetic. Mood is high. Motivation is high. Confidence is high. You are communicating well and kind of want to be out and be seen and connect in this phase. And then after ovulation, moving into phase 4, it is more of a progesterone dominant phase, although there is some estrogen present. And it's a little bit more of an even keel type of phase for the most part. where you are a little bit more in tune with your own experience and what is in your immediate surroundings. And it's a good time to kind of finish projects, complete things, and focus maybe on more of like a traditional self care as you move into and prepare to move into phase one, which phase one, that hormonal low, actually hits before the new cycle begins, before bleeding even starts. Those hormones will kind of drop off. So, how does this apply to um, the postpartum phase? Well, what happens in phase one in the menstrual cycle is there's this massive, not massive, this drop, this noticeable drop in hormones when they reach their lowest level. But then when we compare it to what's happening after birth when you're immediately postpartum, is at the end of pregnancy your hormone levels were extremely high, higher than they typically are, your reproductive hormones, that is, higher than they typically are in a menstrual cycle, much higher. And then they drop off shortly after birth. And as I see it, this really leads you into a phase one experience, a phase one hormonal low. And what that might look like is that you might feel lower energy. Your mood might be lower, right? We talk about the baby blues, and this is a piece of it, this extreme hormonal shift and new hormonal experience. And especially some women are particularly, I will say, sensitive to that shifting of hormones. And this is a massive shift. And even if you're not super sensitive to the shifting hormones, this is still not a place where you have that boost that those reproductive hormones typically give you. So sometimes you might feel kind of foggy. You might feel just kind of raw and emotional, and they might come and go in waves. And it's a time where you really want to consider how you can support yourself. And so, in all phases, whether you are in normal cycles and you just kind of want to do cycle syncing, whether you are in pregnancy or moving into postpartum, early postpartum or later postpartum, I really recommend creating some kind of self manual for yourself that takes into consideration number one, our design, right, our hormonal changes and seasons, and then also takes into consideration your unique preferences, needs, and and then third, takes into consideration what are the things that are really simple, that are really helpful to support your energy, your mood, your outlook, having helpful thoughts. So in that phase one of postpartum, right? You are newly postpartum, you've got this newborn baby in your arms. You want to remind yourself of things like it's okay to let some things go, right? It's more than okay to rest in this phase. It is okay and good to ask for help or to ask for support, to focus on your well being and the well being of this new little life that's been entrusted to you, and also helping the people around you kind of move through that transition. And to do that, it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and hormonally, you're not necessarily in a place where you can do a lot. And so we want to be really mindful of where we're directing the time and energy we have, and also be mindful of the ways that we can support our mood and our energy, right? So that is asking for support. It means not pushing too hard, not overworking. It means that there are going to be things that get left undone, and that's okay. And maybe some of the things that are really supportive for you are like a warm drink or putting on some music, something that's simple and easy to do during this time. Maybe it's just reminding yourself to take deep breaths or to do some gentle stretching. And for women, this time, this like intense hormonal low time can vary in its time frame. For some women, maybe it's only, a month or 6 weeks. Maybe for some women, it feels like it's longer because there's so many factors going on with each individual's physiology and their recovery, and they all kind of are interrelated. So be patient with yourself and know that you might be in a hormonal low to some extent longer than you anticipate or longer than you give yourself permission to, and to just to be really gentle with yourself. So from the phase one experience, then at some point you kind of move into this phase two of postpartum, this ease in and ramp up, where you're feeling your motivation and your energy come back. But a lot of times, what you'll notice is that while you start to kind of like ramp up or lean into something, or push a little harder, you might find that it's too much, like that tendency for overwhelm, or that obvious maybe depletion that you really haven't restored after the pregnancy and the birth will kind of come up for you, and you'll feel it mentally and physically. And so you want to be gentle with the things that you begin to re-engage in. You want to be gentle when your schedule begins to normalize. You want to consider even your movement, right? You don't want to go full force right away. Just be gentle, see how it feels, and adjust from there. Be open to the idea that for you, maybe it is a quick bounce back in many areas. Maybe some are a quick bounce back to your normal before postpartum, but maybe some other areas are not. So you want to kind of move gently, see how it feels, and adjust from there. And then at some point, and for some women, again, this is rather quickly. Some women have their period and their actual cycle come back at 2 months postpartum. Well, maybe it's 6 months postpartum, or maybe it takes, almost a year or more postpartum for your cycle to fully come back and ovulation to happen. So when you're in that phase, it's kind of like there's still this easing in phase two vibe, even though you're moving through all the other phases, because things aren't necessarily going to be like fully in line with what you expect. So maybe, your phase four isn't as long, or maybe you don't have as much time to like do things as you thought. Sometimes your period is even more intense than it was before, just for a cycle or two while things are kind of evening out. Sometimes the phase two will feel extra long as your body's trying to kind of gear up, or you might feel like you move into phase three and then you kind of revert back to phase two as things are kind of increasing, but maybe not ready to fully lead into ovulation. So I almost think for a time after, even when your cycle's back, you want to continue this a little bit of a phase two mindset where you're being gentle and you're trying to be really aware. And again, you're keeping some of those reminders of, what do I need? How can I ask for support? What are the reminders I want myself to have about, my value and my worth and the phase that I'm in, and how I'm able to rest and I'm able to take it slower. These things can be really, really helpful. So I hope you have found this encouraging for you. I hope you found a few takeaways that you can then better enjoy this time, right? Because all of these things, these phases, they are only a season. And we want them to be the fullest season that they can for what they were designed to be. And I hope that that is your experience. So be gentle with yourself. Consider that your hormones are hugely impactful for your experience, and they're shifting quite a bit, and they are lower during postpartum. So just keep that in mind and find small, simple ways to support yourself through that time.